feet, and that's a natural. By God, that's what you should have. Is that you shouldn't be forced to be someplace you don't want to be, and that was one of the things they made people do. So and the thing that kills me is I grew up with this because all the left during the early '60s and late '50s rationalized all these things, and that was one of the things they rationalized. Then you look at it later and you say, Jesus, what were people delusional not to realize what that was all about? I mean, it didn't take any.
You don't understand. It seems to me you still don't comprehend though that there were valid reasons for the war. That there was tremendous pressures to try to destroy the system.
Well, the basic reason though,
much greater pressures than the Soviet Union was able to exert on the West. I mean, the West, with their capital, with their ability to manipulate, were much stronger in their destructive tendencies.
Yeah, but the problem is, I think that if you rationalize things like that, you can end up, it's a step-by-step thing, because the reason the Soviet Union ended up where it is now, I think, is all along the left was willing to rationalize things that on the surface, on the face of them, were absurd. And one of the things, if you rationalize, is hey, you have to oppress people for their own good.
All right.
Eventually,
now you're saying that with the new drive toward restructuring and democracy in the Soviet Union, that somehow that is nothing but proof of weakness. That's what it is. To me,
no, I think that's a sign of desperation, because I think internally the Communist Party wouldn't have done that unless they realized that their own people are so alienated from them that they say, I don't give a goddamn what you people do, because all I'm going to do is go out and get my vodka. That's how cynical people have become there. I mean, I told you, the guy who won tremendous number of votes, his only platform was make vodka cheaper.
Where did you get that information?
This was, that was in the American press, but I don't dismiss what I read in the American press, because in fact they named the candidates who were running, Yeltsin and so on, and they said this guy's only platform was that.
The thing is, what you underestimate is that still the continuing desire on the part of a lot of people in the United States to discredit everything that goes on in the Soviet Union.
Oh, I know.
They're going to continue that for the next 100 years. They're going to be finding flaws with this. They don't want that ever.
Well, actually, if they do that, they're fools. If they do that, they're fools. You know why? Because they can fight the Soviet Union all they want. Meanwhile, Japan is stealing the world from under them. They're absolute fools because they
don't care about Japan. They don't care about countries at this point. You see, the thing is, the Soviet Union probably realized far sooner than anybody else that there were forces that were stronger than the communist system. That nationalism proved to, even in World War I, actually, I mean, before the thing even started, that the workers did not side with the workers in the rest of the world. They sided with the nationalist power, whoever that might be, in Germany and in all these countries. So the nationalism was stronger. Then combined with, but I think that what has happened is that now nationalism isn't as strong. I mean, it's strong among the Desert Stormers, the people who wave the flag, the ordinary people. But for the people who do the controlling, nationalism is insignificant, because they could deal with the Japanese or any other power, because
actually, it's a little different. It's a little
economics
different in Japan. You know why? Because I think the Japanese culture was so different and alienated from the West. I mean, their culture is different than ours. And it is true that in Europe, for instance, there is an internationalism to capital. But if you look at Perot, for instance, he tried to get in Japan, and he found it really difficult, because the Japanese recognize that if they let the wolves in the door, they're not completely stupid. They recognize that if they let the wolves in the door, which is American capitalism, American lawyers, then they were going to have all the symptoms that we have. So they're smart enough to actually make laws that prevent, for instance, American international law from getting in there. Yeah. And they have their own way, which Perot found, that even though he was able to buy in Japanese companies, they essentially, the boards of those companies didn't want anything to do with them, and they just kind of excluded them. And so it isn't true, I think, that there's that kind of internationalism that's true in Japan. In fact, they want that, because they like to latch onto Japan right now, because Japan is very successful.
Yeah,
but they're going to have a hard time doing it.
But the thing is, there's a whole level of sort of, not the Perots, but other people who are involved in running companies and so on, who are hired by the Japanese. and so on, who are very happy with the system. How many millions of people that are dependent upon Japanese enterprises in this country are all in favor of this new system?
Yeah, but actually,
See, the other thing is, I think that you're making the same mistake about Japan that you're
That is a
confusing
danger.
of the Russians, the beliefs.
Yeah, that is a
within the
danger.
You say Japan is the technological genius, the giants. They've got a cohesive society. They're going to take over the world. They're just everything they do is perfect.
no, I realize that is a danger, but I say, see, that I'm just looking at the surface things and saying the Japanese. I look at the massive problems we have here, and I say, even though they've got crazy problems in Japan, for instance, they've got this obsessing with work, which is going to eventually, like the husbands don't even go home to their wives. They stay in these little hotels. But I say, if I look at the massive problems we have here, and they just don't have them, eventually that has to tell. I mean, it may take a generation, it may take 2 generations. We're going to see now, with this generation being educated now, and how badly educated they are, that's going to tell in 10 years from now. So even if we turn things around today, 10 years from now we're going to have something of a disaster because of what's happening right now. And the possibility of turning around in today is minuscule. So I'd say the fact that Japan doesn't have a huge drug problem, which we may try to import there, the fact that Japan doesn't have a huge AIDS problem, which may come there, I don't know, eventually. The fact that they don't have crime where people are afraid to walk out at night in their streets, which we have. The fact that they don't have, they have capital which is not plundering the country like we have with savings and loan scandals and huge budget deficits and corruption of on a massive level. To me, those things are huge benefits for a country which is emerging and confident, as Japan is right now, extremely confident, getting more and more confident, and may eventually even get arrogant, because they certainly did during the Second World War, But we got arrogant also. I mean, we got extremely arrogant, and were very successful for a while. So I think that their day is coming. In the 21st century, I think their day definitely is coming. I see it in the field I'm in. Because I see, in terms of technology,
that
they're
again,
doing really good.
distorts your view because you see it so much in the field that you're in, rather than
Right.
you think that that's where it all is. I mean, because you're involved in that on a daily basis, you assume that that's where the world is. But there are other things other than computers. I mean,
No, but you know what? You know why I say that, Frank? Because I know in Renaissance Italy, everybody wanted to be in Italy. You know why? Because the best designs came out of Italy. The best ideas came out of Italy. People wanted Italian marble figures. They wanted, they wanted the kind of Baroque things that were coming out of that era. Now you look at Japan, and I see everything I see well, I don't want to say everything, but when I see a Japanese product, when I see a calculator or a car or a telephone, I say, man, whoever did this put a tremendous amount of thought into it. It was designed very simply and elegantly. There's an elegance of design, and which I don't see in American products.
Well,
So I think that's they're emerging with this kind of Renaissance mentality. Eventually, they're going to have to get smug about it because they say, geez, they're doing, it's just no comparison. No wonder that people want to buy Japanese goods because they're much, much better designed than American goods.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's denying that's true. And what else could they have done? Given the situation they faced in 1945, except to make those attempts to get back into the world. But I think that again that you're not talking about. I mean, that's not the only thing. The fact that they have good technology. I mean, that certainly goes a long way. I sort of think that the technology thing is a bust anyway. I mean, the telephones are not working right. Last week, in a wide scale, you'll continue to see breakdowns of one sort or another, and not just here but in Japan. Well, the telephones in about 6 parts of the country just were not functioning.
Really?
And computer breakdowns could. I don't know. Maybe that's all mythology too. That that the system could fall apart. But it seems to me that all of it is sort of on shaky. We're all on shaky ground.
Well, yeah. As when you say that it may be that you get starry-eyed about Japan, I don't want to get that way either because I recognize that you tend to say, well, this is going to be the solution. I think Japan has got, there's a lot of things I wouldn't
See,
like.
that's why I started, get back to what I started earlier. I think ultimately the United States is in the strongest position because one, we're willing to look at the multi-ethnic problem in a way that nobody else looks at it. And we, even though the conflict exists and blacks will always be hated by a certain number of people and people
vice
all the time
versa.
like the Japanese and vice versa, that will change. I mean, that we are far on the road toward a society that's able to forge ahead and do things that Japan and
Well, you know, see, the difference is I think we have such slimy leaders who
Auntie
are
Bo, you
so
wanna go down to
short-sighted.
the
They're just
seashore
such
now?
assholes, really.
Right.
And Japan was forced, as you say, by the Second
Would you
World
like to
War, to
come?
make very difficult
Look,
decisions.
years ahead.
I don't see any of these people making difficult decisions. I mean, I can't
We
see
should have
Bush
this
making a
conversation
difficult
down at the
decision.
seashore.
You know, they're
Well,
just
I guess
Make you
people
want to
are afraid of
consider
the sun.
20,
It's
30,
so
40,
intense
60
Oh,
years
yeah.
from now. He's
no
incapable of it.
possibility. No possibility.
Yeah.
These people are all interested in some
Fascinating
kind of image.
conversations.
Image.
They're all interested
Uh,
in their immediate gain during their own term.
Yeah.
well.
Not
Yeah,
all of
I-
them.
See, I think that probably, I mean, that's certainly been the history. You know, we were talking about that, for, you know, after the Civil War, I mean, all sorts of people